the Go Gopher Podcast, episode number 161. I am Mike Grimm, voice of the Golden Gophers, and welcome back to the podcast. 6 former Golden Gopher football players took part in the NFL Scouting Combine last week in Indianapolis, and each did things in an impressive manner. Those that tested had great numbers. We're going to find out what those numbers and their interviews might mean by breaking it all down with our good friend, the Gopher Guru, Daniel House. He's dialed into what NFL teams are looking for and what these Gophers can potentially provide. You can find Daniel House at his webpage, gophersguru.com. Definitely outstanding content and worthwhile to subscribe and consume. Our Go Gopher podcast is presented by alumni-owned Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. If you're a business founder planning to exit your business, start by contacting Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. Sunbelt serves more businesses up to $5 million in revenue than anyone, and True North M&A serves companies with revenues up to $150 million. Get a confidential, no cost, no obligation business valuation started today. Make the most of your life's work. Visit sunbeltminnesota.com or tnma.com today. Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union's also one of our big sponsors of the Go Gopher podcast. Life math is complicated, and Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union makes it easier with local financial experts available to help in person or virtually. Go to affinityplus.org/Go Gophers for more info. And thanks again to the great folks at Affinity Plus. The Go Gopher podcast is also presented by Onyx Maps. Find out how to download the Onyx Fish app for free by listening to this week's Go Gopher podcast. We're podcasting episode 161 from the Aquarius Home Services studio. We invite you to subscribe to the Go Gopher podcast. It's free to do so, and you can also go back and listen to previous Go Gopher podcast. Last week, for example, we talked with Gopher men's hockey player Aaron Huglin of Roseau. He told us his incredible story of being a husband and a new father, all while competing at the highest level of college hockey. This week, we're talking football. We'll get the breakdown with Gopher Guru Daniel House next.
I'm Clay Geary, walk-on turned scholarship wide receiver for Gopher football.
And I'm Ben Utek, U of M alumni, Super Bowl champion, and Tony Dungy Uncommon Award winner.
We understand championship culture, which is why we're part of the True North family of companies.
True North invests in only elite teams, like the champion team at Sunbelt Business Advisors, Minnesota's largest seller of companies. To learn more about True North and our diverse family of independently owned companies, visit TrueNorthEquityPartners.com.
Keep the good times rolling without the regrets. Giggly THC beverages are your go-to for bold flavor and smooth vibes. Zero alcohol, no bad decisions. Just THC-infused cocktails, seltzers, and teas packed with natural ingredients and performance-boosting superfoods like ashwagandha and ginseng. Find Giggly at over 500 locations like Total Wine, MGM, and Cub Foods, or shop online at giggly.com. That's Gigli.com. Ready to upgrade your drink game? Use the code Giggly North, as in Giggly Talk North. Giggly North, Gigli North, for 50% off your first order. Giggly, sip smarter, feel better.
It's episode number 161 of the Go Gopher podcast, and we're going to talk some football here this week. We have the Gopher Guru Daniel House, one of our favorites. He's a return visitor here to our podcast, and a lot to talk about, certainly, with the NFL Scouting Combine now in the books, and 6 Gophers taking part, and really 7 when you count Dragan Kesic, who took part in the special teams portion of that event. We'll get his thoughts on that and a few more things. Daniel House, the Gophers Guru at gophersguru.com. Good to see you.
Good to see you. I always know you're going to hit me up when the combine hits and the pro day is approaching. I always know I'll be on the Grimm podcast.
Yeah, because you got all the info. You know what you're talking about, and people enjoy hearing what you think about these things, because this is very, like, I hear the Deuce Staley drill, and I don't know what that even is. What is the Deuce Staley drill, just out of curiosity?
It's a drill that I believe he created back in the day. So they think it's a good evaluation point for running backs. There's so much stuff now, though, that they can use player tracking to evaluate players better. Sure. And I mean, it's cool now that the combine allows media to see some of that stuff. I think it's super valuable, especially when you use them at the showcase events. Yeah. Now you're seeing that whole process change to the point where I think there will be a lot of modernization of the combine moving forward. It's like, look at the player tracking for Ja Joyner when you look at the miles per hour splits. Yeah. There was a lot of buzz on that in the next gen stats. So people definitely are starting to use that, especially the progressive NFL organizations.
Yeah, because with Jaw, he had a pretty impressive 40 time, but his top end speed where he hit his peak speed was like amongst the best of any defensive lineman, right?
Yeah, he hit 22.58 miles per hour in the 40-yard dash. So that was the best output among edge rushers. He was a little over almost 20.6 miles per hour at the 20-yard mark. So, I mean, he's able to maintain speed. You saw that, based on his splits in the 40 as well. And then you look at like the acceleration splits that he had in the various drills. Teams love that length and power that he brings. I have always said the Jason Pierre-Paul comp for him, and the metrics came out pretty close.
Wow.
Definitely similar body types and physical makeup, athletic profile very close as well, but Ja was actually better in the speed component. So Ja is definitely someone that I think is being a little bit slept on in the sense that there's going to be a team out there that really, really likes him. I could see the Philadelphia Eagles definitely being super interested because he really fits their draft profile, what they like.
Yeah. And what does it just generally, and I'm going to ask you about some specific numbers with all of these guys, but I think generally, and correct me if I'm wrong, these guys that tested pretty well. I know Lindenberg didn't do much physically because he's still recovering from a hernia, but it looked like the numbers were pretty good. And what does that, if anything, say about, one, what the Gophers are doing strength and conditioning wise, and two, whoever these guys chose as their own personal trainers after the season to get them ready for these drills? It's probably a combination of all of that, I suppose.
Yeah, Dan Nickel does a really good job with Minnesota's strength program. You look at what they've been able to do in developing players. A lot of those guys have been in the program for a significant period of time, and you kind of see the progression of when they do arrive in the program, where they're at by the end. And Minnesota puts a big emphasis on a lot of that combine training, making sure guys understand how that works and putting them through it and, evaluating where they're at, where they can improve. And then they're technically ready to do it. I mean, that's the thing I notice when I watch a lot of these guys go through the workouts. It's easy to see who's really practiced it, who's trained it, and who hasn't, because the starts are clean and you look at like where their head's at, if they're keeping their head down and then slowly lifting as they, continue to go through the 40. I think now teams aren't using those type of metrics as much. The player tracking component, like we talked about, is a big deal. And Minnesota's players, I mean, testing wise, Justin Wally ran well, which I think was important for him. Teams wanted to see the speed. I don't think people anticipated that he'd run a 4.4 flat. I mean, 92nd percentile type of output for him, which is excellent. 10-yard split was good. So now we'll see at the pro day, he'll go through a little bit more testing to get a feel for, the shuttle and the explosiveness profile, agility, and that stuff. So, I mean, good start for him.
All right, well, let's go. We talked about Joyner. We've talked about Wally a little bit. So let's start with these defensive guys. How do you think, first of all, what impressed, do you think, most of the people in your ilk that really follow this about Joyner the most? And what does what looked like a pretty good performance in Indy mean for his potential draft spot or profile?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think based on what he's able to do there, the flashes that you saw at Minnesota, the upside from athletic and frame standpoint, what NFL teams are looking for, I think that he'll probably end up going in the third round. There's somebody out there that definitely really, really likes Ja and what they could unlock in the system. I, noted a few of them: Philadelphia, Green Bay, Buffalo Bills, Arizona. Obviously, you got a connection there with Winston now.
Yeah,
They could use a little bit more pass rushing juice down there. So those are a few things to watch for him. But he certainly, based on the player tracking side of it, to see him put up that speed profile was something that teams are going to like. And then, being able to have that physical component like the JPP comp is super interesting. I'm not a huge comp guy, but I think like if you can see it and you watch it in person, it definitely can be valuable.
Let's talk about Wally. You mentioned him. He ran a 4.4. He didn't do all the drills pro days on March 19th at the Gopher facility. But I got to believe that his 4.4 was helpful for how scouts will view him.
Absolutely. I mean, that's something that I thought, the speed profile was something that a lot of us knew because we saw his high school film and his background as an athlete. You knew he'd probably run well, but I think NFL teams wanted to confirm that. So now the big thing for him will be the agility and the explosiveness profiles, definitely getting the broad jump, the vert, and then the shuttle time to be able to put together all the components. I mean, I studied a lot of defensive backs, and that explosiveness profile piece is really important. We have one component of the testing in the 20-yard split, the ability to see how a defensive back maintains speed. Now, I think that if we can get those other two variables, that's something that NFL teams will look for. But I think right now, just at watching the cornerbacks, getting a feel for the draft strengths and weaknesses, I think Wally's probably in that 5th round area right now. I think he's in a really good spot. He played in a system that allowed him to really showcase his versatility. He's confident in the zone coverage techniques. Minnesota did a lot with him dropping into the deep half and inverting coverage, and a lot of the things that teams are looking for schematically in the systems that are run in the NFL. But he's also able to play in man coverage. He can play the nickel at the next level potentially as well. So all of those things, the versatility combined with if his testing lines up at the pro day, that's putting him in a pretty good spot. I think he's one of the more underrated guys right now among the draft prospects.
Yeah, I even think within the Gopher fandom, the fan base, he probably had an underrated season. Obviously, a lot of attention was, and rightfully so, on Coy Parrish with his, league-leading 5 interceptions. And Wally has never been a big interception guy, but I thought his coverage, that was his best season of pass coverage for the Gophers. He missed a couple games with injury. I mean, outside of brandishing a weapon in that USC game, he was huge, in that last drive. He had, I think, 3 pass breakups in that last drive to help stymie the Trojans. I just thought he was maybe underappreciated a little bit, particularly his last year. I don't know what you thought when you watched.
Yeah, absolutely. And I liked how they, their scheme this year, what they were able to do, like I mentioned, just to be able to utilize his versatility. He's really good at clicking and closing on the ball, transitioning from break foot to drive foot out of zone and making plays on the ball. And he's very good at accelerating on vertical routes to compress space into the sideline. I think all those things will suit him well when he goes to the NFL and put him in a good position because, now that's going to be a big thing the Gophers have to replace. Like you say, Wally is very underappreciated, been a steady presence, a veteran there, very productive as well.
Yeah, and he I think has been a fairly good tackler. Not everyone's going to be perfect, but what I liked about him and watching is that he was never he wasn't a soft player. He wasn't scared to go put his nose on a kneecap somewhere and try to make a tackle. Didn't always make the tackle, but I thought he was a firm enough tackler that shouldn't be any kind of demerit. And he certainly wasn't soft. He wasn't shying away from contact or worried about collisions for that matter.
And you go back to high school, being a really good offensive player. I think, you look at the guys that have very good skill player film and they go over to the other side of the ball. The guys, tend to translate really well. They got good feel and good suddenness to them. I think that was the thing you saw when Minnesota picked up Wally back in the day.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Lindenberg. He did not take part in drills. He did interviews. Obviously, the Senior Bowl looked to be pretty important for him. I think he turned some heads and impressed some of the people there. So Pro Day could be valuable if he's fully recovered and can take part. What's your assessment of Cody Lindenberg?
Yeah, I think the pro day will be important if he's able to go. Then they're able to see some of the testing metrics that he has available. I think the short shuttle and the agility component he's going to be really strong in, just based on, watching him over the years. How fast does he run? That's something that NFL teams will be gauging a little bit. Tempering that with the idea that he's recovering from a surgery like Andrew Kramer reported start to be, and he had a sports hernia on December 2nd. But sounds like he'll be back in time for the pro day to do some of I would assume most of the testing and the on-field stuff as well. So that's going to be a big, important moment because if he's able to test well, pairing up with the film that you saw, especially in the second half of the year, I thought he really found his stride as the season went on, gaining comfort coming back from the injury, but definitely, range, length, coverage ability, ability to blitz, do a lot of different things for you. I think, Lindenberg's someone that if the testing goes well and the health piece, checks out, he'll be, in that early 6th round potential slot.
Yeah, and I think too he'll depending on how much teams value it, just being around him and knowing him, I think he is a guy that probably impressed anybody he talked to in those interviews, right?
Yeah, I mean, his ability to see the game, processing, the whole system of what he was asked to do at Minnesota over the years. I think the translation's gone well for a lot of players that have gone to the NFL that have played significant snaps and posted productivity. They've done well translating. And I think Cody, it's just going to all be about the health piece for him. He's had a lot of fluke injuries over the years that just kind of pop up, and that's if he can stay healthy, he's got, a lot to offer.
Let's talk about Ariante Ursary as we flip now to the offensive side of the football, the Gopher starting left tackle. We knew he'd be good this year, and he was. There was thought that he could play himself into a first-round pick. I mean, at the start of the year, that wasn't a slam dunk, and even maybe as recently as toward the end of the year, it wasn't a slam dunk, and it might still not be. However, it seems like the momentum is shifting toward he's not going to get out of that first round. What do you think? And give us some numbers that lead you to believe whatever your thought is on him.
I mean, unreal to go 501 at 6'6", 331. I mean, you anticipated it if you were around Ariante and know his story about how athletic he was. I go back to the recruiting story about him being at a satellite camp wearing blue shorts, and Kirk Shiraka's like, who's this blue shorts guy? Got to go get blue shorts, dude.
Yeah.
And it turns out, like, think about it. If Ariante's not spotted at a satellite camp, like, what does his path look like?
Yeah.
And that's the remarkable part, is like the story of these guys early on. But testing wise, I mean, 10-yard split at 175, 90th percentile, relative athletic score, which is really important. That a lot of people look at that. Out of 10, he was 9.35. So he's like close to a 94th percentile athlete among players at his position, 91st among like almost 1,400 offensive tackles since 87. So he's got a lot of really good athleticism that can translate to the NFL. And I think you saw like the lower half flexibility is what makes him really special, able to anchor and drop his weight, 9.3 broad jump, 90th percentile in that category. I think the big thing you're going to see now is potentially him doing the shuttle at the pro day to improve that metric. You look at guys in the NFL that are able to hit the 4.47 benchmark in the shuttle. The translation is actually very fascinating. So I think you'll probably see him do that and stand on the 40 and the speed profile that he was able to put up. But when you pair up the film, the movement skills that he showed in that area, and then, the athleticism, that everything's kind of pairing up really well for him. I like Los Angeles Rams as a fit. Kansas City would be a good spot. What a great story that'd be for him to be able to go back where he's from. Do
you think he will fall far enough to get to KC? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I definitely think that's possible. I think he's a late 1, early 2 pick. This is an interesting draft because I don't think it's not a heavy blue chip player draft where there's like elite talent, but I think there's a lot of really good starting caliber players, role guys that can, help your team significantly. You're really going to see the teams who know how to evaluate, separate themselves, and the teams that don't might not be able to really put together a good roster. So I think that kind of creates a spot where Ariante could, filter into that back half of round 1, early round 2 discussion.
Now, anyone certainly can put out a mock draft, but I saw one the other day, it might have been yesterday even, that had him going to the Bears at 10. Could you potentially foresee that, or is that too early?
Wow, that would be a big time surprise, I think. Okay. But, if somebody falls in love with Ariante, they might be able to pull the trigger on it. But, I mean, I like a lot of the options that are available at the draft. Josh Simmons is really good at Ohio State if he checks out medically. I know a lot of teams like Will Campbell, I'm not as high on him, but from my view, being around Jaw and evaluating a lot of different guys getting ready for the draft, he's definitely in that conversation. You aren't in the first round conversation if you're not a high caliber player that still has a lot to be unlocked.
Yeah.
And I think, all it takes is one team to really be enamored with it. Chicago could potentially move back in a case, and potentially draft them as well. They're a team that's in the market for offensive line. So that might be the play for them to move back and make that type of move.
All right. Another Kansas City product, Daniel Jackson. It seemed like every week we saw him make another spectacular catch. Looks to me like a good route runner. I always loved his balance. He would not go down on a collision. Now, if someone wrapped and tackled him, they could, but if someone just wanted to come up and put a lick on him and not wrap, he would oftentimes just I always said it's like a poor man's Stephon Diggs. Diggs was the same way. You'd get hit, and if you didn't wrap him, he'd ricochet off and keep going. His balance is incredible. How did his combine go, and where do you see him maybe headed?
Yeah, the balance and that trait definitely shows up when you look at like a 3-cone drill that they were running them through, slotted in fourth among the receivers with a 6.78, was second best in the shuttle at 4.07. So, the suddenness, the balance, the change of direction, you saw that a lot when he cycle in and out of breaks. He's really able to transition well, drop his weight, set routes up, able to create a lot of free access for him, motioning him around and getting him good opportunities in that area. I think, you look at now the pro day will be more of the speed and explosiveness. Teams are going to want to see how fast Jackson is. I'm fascinated to see what type of 40 he can run. Is it going to be in a spot where, NFL teams they see the suddenness, they see the film, they see the hands, like the whole package. Now they want to see the downfield speed. And I think, right now, 6th or 7th round discussion, depending on, how the testing and the speed and explosiveness profile go, but just a rock solid player. You look at what he was able to do at Minnesota, all the big time catches, outstanding hands, the progression of his game over the course of his career. I think he's a guy that consistently got better. Like his short area route running, I thought improved a lot as time went on. Someone that really, I just noticed a lot of development just in his confidence over the course of his career.
Agreed.
Like by the end of his career, just a totally different guy. Even in the media setting, he just really, really became confident.
And again, and this is a theme. They target good kids in this program. There's no doubt. Not to say that everyone's perfect all the time. Good people sometimes aren't. He never was an issue, and just a stellar citizen and leader on this team too. And that does carry some weight, particularly when you get into those kind of rounds, right? If there's 50 guys that are potential 6th or 7th round picks, and they're all kind of on your board about even, you're going to probably side with the guy that doesn't have any red flags off the field.
Yeah, and just the type of system that he played in, how Minnesota really, had a lot of West Coast route tree principles, a lot of the stuff that they were able to run. You see some of that in the NFL. So I think that gives him an edge as well, just how he was utilized and the knowledge that he has of a system that would help him translate well.
All right, the quarterback, Max Brosmer, had a really good year. He got, he's pretty steady from the start, but when the biggest moments late in games came up, he usually came through as well. We know he's smart. We know he can process. That was basically the storylines. The question is, did he have a big enough arm? He went to, the Hula Bowl, I think, and maybe turned a few heads. I don't know. What did the combine do for him as well, and how do you project Max Brosmer?
Well, the aspect of the combine is just allowing him to get in front of the teams, just being able to talk to them. And I think that's where he excels, is just his intelligence, his ability to get on a whiteboard and, dissect everything, talk about all the different reads, his field vision, ability to move defenders. I think you saw that a lot, being able to work from one side of the field back. You look at the TD in the UCLA game, how confident he was to be able to execute that all the way through the end of the progression and bang, game-winning score. Just a lot of those things where he's able to go to the line of scrimmage and have multiple options and check into the best play. Those are things that teams like in that toward the end of the draft where, you might not want this guy to get to undrafted free agency. You secure him. He provides value as a backup, giving you a lot of, mental ability in the quarterback room to get guys ready for games and then be a long-term backup. But if he is picked, first quarterback selected for the Gophers since 1972 Craig Curry. So it'd be modern era. I think the draft, went in the 90s, went to the 7-round format. So it'd be the first in the, true modern 7-round format that they had a quarterback selected.
Yeah. And, I think Dungy was undrafted, but obviously he ended up not being a quarterback either. So, yeah, that's something that's a long time. And so hopefully he can end that drought. What are the questions on him? What will he be part of Pro Day, and what are teams looking for to solidify kind of what they think of him?
I just think they'll want to see him, throwing all different route types, being able to see him in person, driving the football downfield into the tighter windows, being able to just assess overall arm strength in person, seeing him, if he can make all the throws that are, requisite of transitioning to the NFL, because, it's like he went from FCS to Big Ten to NFL, and like the speed in the windows just change, at every single jump. And so, NFL teams are going to be looking at that. He'll probably do athletic testing there. That's not a huge component for the quarterbacks, in a sense that, teams are not really putting too much weight into that. So I think, it's just going to be the on-field piece, and then reconnecting with a lot of the teams that he's probably already talked with. I'd like to see him in Seattle. I think it would be a really good fit for him. Now that Kubiak's running the offense out there, and just the situation that he would be entering, it'd be a very good landing spot, maybe the 7th round.
I did not watch any of the combine, but thumbing through the timeline of Twitter and what have you, you see, particularly on my algorithm, I get a lot of Gopher stuff popping through, and there were a couple of highlights of him at the combine, including one where I might have been Kurt Warner, I think. He was commenting during the quarterback sessions, and Max threw back-to-back bombs and caught these two dudes right on stride. Both, I think Rick Geisen and whoever else was there, along with Warner, were both like, whoa, that's a pretty good deep throw. Is that a question in his game, and can throws like that help him?
Yeah, I think just being able to show that, you can drive the football the opposite hash. You got to be able to, take advantage of the smaller windows and, throw the ball with accuracy at all 3 levels. I think that, you look at the common denominators of successful quarterbacks that translate to the NFL, in my opinion, ability to throw over the middle of the field with good anticipation, and then look at how they throw in compressed space in the red zone. Are they able to throw with touch, good ball placement, understanding where the windows are, and being able to attack man coverage with, good precision when it happens. I think that's where Max is very exemplary, is just in the red zone piece. And you saw that at New Hampshire. You saw that here. That's a strength of his game. So I think those 2 variables are things that NFL teams want to see. And then they want to see how you can drive, like, corner routes and those type of throws from the opposite hash. There's different evaluation points that teams will look for, and they're definitely going to put them through an extensive workout.
So those were the 6 guys that were invited to the NFL Combine. I don't know, what do you know? I'm putting you on the spot here. What the percentage of players who attend the Combine, and how many of those guys end up get drafted? Is it like most of them? Is it 70% of those guys? Is it all of them?
Yeah, I think, gosh, just looking at it real quick, it appears it's around 85%.
Okay. Yeah.
From the combine are able to be drafted. So,
Yeah.
That's, most of the players that are going there are getting a chance. It's a little more than 8 out of 10.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, there was a 7th Gopher who took part in some drills. That was Dragan Kesic, the Big Ten kicker of the year 2 years ago. And I think the day before the draft starts, the specialists, the punters and kickers and such, go to Lucas Oil Stadium and do some stuff. So I technically would count that really there were 7 Gophers. The number always cited is 6, but he was part of it. There were special teams coordinators and head coaches watching. I did see a highlight where he did boot like a 60-some yard field goal. We know he has a big leg. What have you heard about how he did in his session, and what do you think his future prognosis as a pro football player is?
Yeah, probably an undrafted free agent, maybe to come in and compete with a guy existing on a roster in camp. I think that you saw the previous year very consistent. This past season, not as consistent. So I think teams are going to want to just get him in and, work with him, develop some stuff, see what they can unlock. I think having Bob Legashevsky, who's pretty connected in the special teams community, will be beneficial for him to, be able to say, hey, this is a guy that, you should definitely invest in and develop. So I think that will help him. If that is weird how that works, how like they put the invite list with some of the specialists out there that are technically invited to the combine, but then they have a special showcase that is that, but the day before the combine actually begins. And he was a part of that. They had a ton of European kickers. There was a guy from Italy that I was watching that was just pounding the football. I'm like, holy cow, there's a lot of really good kickers over in the international scene. So it's a big deal, and I wish they kind of plugged that a little harder.
Yeah, no doubt. And with Dragan, obviously big personality, great kid. And it's interesting because I go back and remember the field goals in terms of his quote unquote inconsistency. He missed a couple at important times. We know about the North Carolina kick. One hit the upright, one just missed by a foot or two to win the game. He had, and I get it. College kickers shouldn't, but that's not always the case in terms of have, shanks or miss by 20 feet. If you look, even like he missed one at Michigan in the rain from 50 something, it was 3 inches from hitting the upright. So if that's, 12 inches to the left, it's a 54-yarder in the rain. That's good. So, close, it doesn't count, but if you're evaluating that, it does have to count a little bit, particularly with the NFL hash marks now, right?
Yep. And, you look at operational things, you've got to, everything's got to be timed up well. It can be just a little bit of things such as a plant leg that causes you to, pull kicks. So I think there will be teams that have special teams experts that are going to try to unlock, the potential that he has, because he's showing that, when everything is tight, that, he has deep range and can be accurate, because the previous year it definitely was the case. That's why he was Big Ten Kicker of the Year.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, those were the guys involved in Indianapolis. We're going to talk about some of the other seniors that were in the program that still could potentially play pro football. First, though, I want to talk about Affinity Plus. It's your local credit union, proudly serving Minnesota since 1930. If you're a current Gopher student or a proud Golden Gopher alum, you are eligible to join this financial that wants to build a meaningful banking relationship and put you first. You can meet with a local employee at any of their branches statewide. That includes right off campus in Minneapolis. To learn more and find other ways to connect, here's the webpage. It's affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. That's affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. They also have an award-winning mobile app, so check that out. It's Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union, federally insured by NCUA. People-centered banking, perfect for Gophers. So I've made a list here of some of the guys that weren't invited to the Combine but have been at varying either Shrine Games or Hula Bowls, or will be part of the Pro Day and hoping to have an impact and maybe have a shot to play pro football. If I've missed some guys, let me know, but I've got a list. Let's see, 2, 4, 6, it looks like 7 guys. I'm going to start with Danny Strigo, who ended up not only playing in the Hula Bowl, right? He also ended up getting a last-minute invite to the Senior Bowl, and that hit kind of went viral when he was interviewed just as he was arriving to the practice field. I don't know enough about it. Just on the surface, I was a little surprised he wasn't invited to the Combine, but, there's a lot of people that have to take those spots. So your assessment of Danny Strigo, and will he, I'm assuming, take part in the March 19th Pro Day as well here at Minnesota?
Yeah, it'll be a big day for him to be able to showcase his testing metrics at the Pro Day. He's someone that, you mentioned it, getting the Senior Bowl, last second invite, hopping on a plane, getting down there. And then, he did a good job. He took advantage of the opportunity, flashed a little bit down there. I think, we all know Danny, intelligent player, very smart, showed improvement every single year, playing in that rush end role, being able to play the run, set the edge, showcase a mix of different pass rush moves. I think that one pass rush move in the Mayo Bowl, where he was able to execute that bull rush and, understand a tendency over the course of the game, hitting with speed, and then to be able to counter with that bull rush. Definitely develop more of an understanding of, how to set up moves over the course of his career. The thing that will complicate things is the fact that this defensive line class is stacked. I can't remember a year where you got more DTs and edges, really, really talented group. So I think that will filter him down a little bit further, probably in that undrafted free agent range, but I think he will be a priority guy that teams will really earmark when he becomes available. Or, you get in that situation where you get to the 7th round, like I say, and you don't want to compete for a player and, financially, he could be someone that sneaks in there just because he's a steady player and he will interview quite well.
Yeah, he'll interview great, no doubt. And I don't know, just watching him, and I don't know what the numbers would indicate, he seems sneaky athletic a little bit in terms of body movement and strength, and he was a former wrestler, and I know a lot of scouts like guys who have wrestled at a high level.
Yeah, I think that he'll be really good in the explosiveness profile, just in terms of the bend piece with the broad jump. I would expect he'll put up a good split there. His ability to, get leverage against blockers is something that you saw quite a bit. And I think, and NFL teams just want to verify what they see on film with the testing metrics, and they'll have an opportunity to do it at the pro day. And then they were able to see him at the Senior Bowl, which I think is just an added benefit for him. That extra time to be able to interview with teams, that elevates you and tells you that you're kind of right on that cut line of, being someone that teams view as a draftable player.
All right, let's move on here. Quinn Carroll, started his career at Notre Dame from Edina, finished as a 3-year starter at Minnesota. Multiple positions now, certainly in this last year, guard and tackle. What does he assess in your mind in terms of potential future professional football player?
Yeah, I see him sliding inside to play guard. I think that's a pretty natural fit for him based on, body type and, what you saw in film at Minnesota. The ability to play multiple spots is something that added a ton of value to his game. I mean, you saw him have to go over to the left side when Ursery went down. They cross-trained him at a lot of different spots, going between right guard and right tackle. So I think, he could even potentially play left guard if needed in the NFL. So I think he's the type of guy that will be on a team competing for a roster spot. He came in here, was just such a steady player for Minnesota that you could count on to do a lot of different things, developed into a really key leader. So I think, teams, again, are going to get another evaluation point to see how he tests. Where does he stack up? What are the measurements like? And, I think he went down to the Hula Bowl. I believe he was down there and got to participate in that. So we'll get a little more clarity on his athletic profile during the pro day, but film wise, he's able to showcase his versatility this year.
The guy that also lined up front, Tyler Cooper, who started his career right as a preferred walk-on with the idea that he would likely earn a scholarship. He did that and turned into a pretty darn good offensive lineman for Minnesota.
Hey, the pride of the heart of the North. He's a Northwest Wisconsin guy, about a half-hour from where I grew up. So we like those heart of the North guys. I think he actually gets picked. There's definitely a chance. Depends on the health. He suffered a little bit of an injury later in the season that he's rehabbing from, so he wasn't able to be in that pre-draft showcase bowl game type of thing. So I think, you look at him, good length and size, wide frame, can work up into the second level, adequate movement skills. I think he's solid in pass pro. Really sneaky kind of in the lateral quickness and ability to react to stunts. I think if you go watch his Penn State game, you really see that in that area. Really quick, active defensive line. I thought he put out some really good film in that game. So Cooper is someone, teams are constantly looking for developmental options in the interior of the O-line. And I think based on what Coop was able to do, definitely the measurement piece. He's got great length and the body type that teams are looking for inside. I think he's someone that day 3 could be picked by somebody.
And with both he and Carroll and a couple of these guys, even Strigo to a certain degree, we see in the NBA, although that is changing as well, everyone wants to draft young, although in the NBA now that's changing a little too because you play out your rookie deal and then you can leave, so you might want older guys. How do NFL teams view some of these guys that have been around the block? Like you mentioned, Tyler Cooper could be a developmental player, but he's not a 21-year-old or a 22-year-old.
Right.
He's got a couple more years, but I think I could also look at that and say that's a good thing. I want a guy that's got a little, gray around the beard, that's seen everything and can come in and develop and give you some years.
I think it used to be a bigger deal where, teams were really wanted to draft the young player. And now I think productivity translates. You look at this thing is changing rapidly where now NIL players can stay, you get a 3rd, 4th round grade and you're getting a mill offer from a team to stay and play college football. You're probably staying and playing. and hoping you can improve your draft stock. So I think now that's less of a worry because you got to take what's available. You find the good players, you draft them, and you look and you go, all right, well, this guy's got a little more tread on the tire, but he's going to maybe be able to come in and help you quicker because of the experience level he has, especially those guys that have played at the highest level in the Big Ten, the SEC.
All right, so let's go to the outside now offense. Elijah Spencer. We talked about Jackson. Elijah Spencer had his breakout senior season, was good late in his junior year, had a couple of touchdowns late in that season, and then really translated, made some tough catches in traffic, reduced the number of drops, really was a good third down guy, had a bowl game touchdown again, I think back-to-back years with that. So what do you see from Elijah Spencer?
Yeah, I always thought he had nice size. He's springy, can transition out of breaks and drop his weight. Good in the red zone, good body control to adjust and make plays on the ball. He had a great bowl game going back out to Charlotte. That was a big thing for him. I think he's someone that not another player that you want to get some testing metrics for because he certainly was productive at Charlotte. A little bit of a transition period coming to Minnesota, then showing productivity this past season and really flourishing in how they featured him in the scheme. So I think he's someone that, there's some productivity he's shown in the past, but what's the path forward and what do NFL teams see as his upward? Is it an upward trajectory for him that they feel they can unlock some stuff? And the system he played in, I think that's the underrated aspect is like I say, that West Coast route tree, the style of offense that they had, it's pretty complex offense. I think that helps these guys when talking to teams too.
Is he an undrafted guy, you think?
Yeah, he's an undrafted guy.
All right, how about Marcus Major, another old guy? He had a decent season for the Gophers, was at Oklahoma, highly recruited out of Oklahoma City as a high schooler. Did not play in the bowl game, started to try to prep for a potential pro career. What do you look at in him?
Tough year to come out as a running back, best running back class I think I've ever seen since I've been doing this. It is absolutely stacked. So Major's an undrafted type of guy, one cut downhill runner in the zone scheme. He's someone that's, shows a little bit of physicality, able to finish runs. I think, his experience in the mid zones, outside zone type of scheme, a lot of teams have that in the NFL. So we'll see, what type of interest level he has. And, again, see how he tests. I think that's something that, these guys that are trying to, get attention, if you test well, it's another thing that can pair up with what you put on film. So that's something to watch.
All right, couple more guys that I have listed. Ethan Robinson, Bucknell transfer, I thought came in and played very well, had very few breakdowns, had very few missed tackles, and has long arms, it looks like, which is, key. What do you think on Ethan Robinson, cornerback?
Yeah, let's see how he runs. That's going to be a big variable here. Just what type of long speed does he have? I mean, I think you saw he's very good mentally, good vision to process route combinations. Minnesota scheme asked, those guys to do a lot of different things like, roll changes and stuff when they're rolling coverages in certain directions. I thought their communication in the secondary was really good, and he was a big part of that. Guys being very, very disciplined in their zone drops. Like that was the thing with Minnesota this year. They were so clean in that respect. And that, is just a credit to, Wally and Robinson, all those guys just buying into the details. And I think he's a physical guy. He's shown good physicality. He's got good length, like you said. So I think if it's going to come down to how he runs, I think he's an undrafted guy that, could end up competing in a camp somewhere.
All right. Jack Henderson, transfer from the lower level, Southeast Louisiana. I thought put together 2 pretty good years, not scared to hit somebody, firm tackler, had a pick 6 in a game earlier this year. What do you think of Jack Henderson?
I'm bullish on Jack. I think Jack is someone that's very, very slept on right now. He's going to test well. He's got good burst. He's able to, accelerate down as a blitzer. I think he's a sub package type of guy that, can come in and give you some physicality. He's a big part of that early down nickel role. They used him a lot, being very aggressive, blitzing off the edge, but he can definitely drop into underneath zones. I wouldn't be surprised if he cut a little bit of weight down. able to, maintain that and continue to expand the quick twitch explosiveness that he has. I think, the blend of physicality and, his ability to be very versatile is something that teams are looking for in their schemes right now. So I would not be surprised if he kind of is the surprise dude coming out of the pro day that everybody's like, oh, wow, I did not think he'd test like that. And NFL teams are like, okay,
yeah,
I see Jack.
Yeah, and I think if that's the case, they'll then be more interested and watch more in-depth tape. And I think they're going to like the tape because he is a football player. I mean, that's a guy of anyone on that defense probably exemplifies what you want representing you as a program. Hard-nosed, tough, ready to tackle, ready to be there for your teammates, all that stuff.
Yeah, and go back and look at the FCS film. I mean, he was so productive down there. Frame, burst, athletic profile. I think he's going to test well. He's been training down in Miami, I believe, getting a lot of quality reps down there. So I definitely keep an eye on Jack and see what he puts up testing wise at the pro day.
All right, that's my list. Have I forgotten anybody?
I'm interested in Nick Callerup too.
Oh yeah, tight end Nick Callerup. Thank you. Sorry, Nick. Yeah.
I think that he might test a little bit better than people are thinking. I know a lot of people around the program saying Nick's got a very good athletic profile. PJ's brought that up several times. He's a good run blocker. I thought he flashed a little bit while releasing late as in the pass game as well. I'm interested to see what type of splits he puts up. I think he'll do well in the broad jump and the vertical profile. He's a big guy. He's got a huge frame. I mean, you look at him when you stand next to him. He's definitely progressed physically over the course of time, and I'm keeping an eye on how he performs.
Yeah, some of the CS people who offered him early projected him to be an offensive lineman, not a tight end, and he wanted to play tight end, I think was part of why he came to Minnesota. I mean, I remember when Keefe got drafted, lots of people were surprised. We know he was a road grader. Is that a fair comp, or are they not quite the same?
I feel like, that type of niche role, as a quality run blocking, tight end is a team that maybe does a lot of 12 personnel, has two tight ends out on the field a lot. He could be an undrafted type of option and provide value on special teams, be serviceable and solid in that area. That's how you find a way on the team. You got to be able to play special teams. Look at Coe in Tampa, coming in as a blocker within certain packages and then being able to be a core special teams guy. I think Callerup could do that as an undrafted guy and, battle it out in camp somewhere.
Anybody else?
That was my list, man. You did well.
We got them all, but Nick's
Callerup, man.
Next time I see Nick, next time we see Nick, he'll punch me in the nose at pro day. Like, how'd you forget about me, man? I was, as you know, I was hurried in trying to get ready for this. I was on campus, did the Ben Johnson radio show, and I didn't want to keep Daniel House waiting, so I hustled back, and we're piecing this baby together as we go.
I felt like I was in a draft room here. Yeah. Like they're making me give my pitch for each player.
Let me real quickly talk about another sponsor. Ice fishing is here, but it's not here much longer. So make sure if you're going to head out, one, be safe, but two, when you hit that frozen water, do so with OnX Fish, the fish app that's the most comprehensive fishing tool for increasing your confidence on the ice. Use OnX Fish to find new places to fish. You can sort lakes by species, abundance, trophy, and keeper potentials. OnX Fish also shows you hot spots, lake-by-lake regulations, private and public land ownership info, and more. And right now, for a limited time, download OnX Fish for free in Minnesota and Wisconsin. Go to onxmaps.com/fish to get more information on the app that is changing the game on ice. And we're glad to have them on board as a sponsor of the Go Gopher podcast. As always, we're happy to have the Gophers Guru Daniel House on board with us. And this is the time of year that we oftentimes like to have him on. And we'll give you a quick chance here to talk about gophersguru.com. I have a feeling some people might say, well, I'd love to subscribe, but I think I'll wait till the season starts. I'll save my money. But this is kind of money time of the year if you want to get some good info on spring football coming up, the NFL draft coming up, how the Gophers are doing. And I know you have all kinds of off-season features and content that you put together. So I would suggest folks immediately stop everything you're doing and get subscribed now. Don't wait till the opening night of football season.
Yeah, support independent content. Basically running an independent website, subscriber base, $5 a month, get you access to the content. It is a good time. You got this combine, being able to look at how each player performs. Spring ball coming up. Posted some studies showing what the Gophers did schematically. You can kind of understand at a simpler level what Minnesota was able to do to produce efficient defense last year. Did a big breakdown on coverage this past season, and will continue to do a lot of those things with some all 22 cuts. So you kind of get that overhead perspective and be able to kind of understand what Minnesota did really well this season. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff throughout the off season that fans can check out and stay up to date on all the latest info. Cause this is 365 now. I'm like, oh my gosh, transfer portal.
Yeah.
Constantly moving. You got the spring window coming up April 1st through April 15th, spring ball, then right into training camp. Then we got a new season. So check it out.
GophersGuru.com. I want to ask you about spring ball. We'll probably have you back during spring ball where we can really take a deep dive. But give me 3 or 4 of the things right now as you look ahead to spring ball, which is, not too far off now, that will be the most intriguing storylines that you and Gopher fans should be following.
I'd say the offensive line. I want to see how all the pieces come together. There's going to be a lot of rotation going on. Kali Tafai coming in from Washington, maybe competing for the left tackle job. You got Nathan Roy in the mix as well. Dylan Ray from Kentucky as a transfer at the guard spot. And then Marcellus Marshall, is he a guard? Is he a tackle? What's the plan at right tackle? I kind of want to see how the offensive line shakes out. Quarterback, you got Pyron and Lindsey competing with each other. Be interesting to see how that goes. I know Lindsey has a lot of talent, but Pyron is very big, athletic type of guy that has some experience. How does he translate into the system? And then I kind of want to see how Rush N comes along. What type of growth do you see from some of those younger guys there? You got Jackson Howard, you got Lucas Finnessy, Carter Menz. Do they have someone really emerge there? I'd say those are 3 areas. Maybe one additional one would be cornerback opposite of Zaquan Bryan, who kind of emerges there. They brought in Jalen Bowden, a transfer from NC Central. I want to see what he looks like in person.
As you look at this Gopher team, and you mentioned there's another transfer window coming up, what will do you think? And it could be that they'll lose a couple of guys. Probably will. That's the way it works. People will get through the spring ball or part of spring ball and see that, okay, maybe I'm not in where I want to be on the depth chart or whatever. What are a couple of places you think if the Gophers needed to go fishing? They speaking of OnX Fish, where would they go fishing, and what positional group?
I would say maybe another rush in pass rusher, an explosive pass rusher could be a position that they might target. We'll see kind of how the linebacker room shakes out. Would they maybe take another linebacker if a good option became available? Offensive tackle, maybe looking for another option there to give themselves more flexibility depending on how some of these younger guys perform. They're definitely going to want to get a lot of competitive reps to just see how everyone fits together, rotate people, try to get an idea of the best combination, which I think will continue into the fall. But I'd say those are a couple of areas where they might, consider looking at options based on how, guys perform, who exits, who stays. I mean, that's the life of a coach right now. Just trying to figure out what is my team going to look like once I get through the spring transfer portal window. Spring ball could look totally different. I think about that. Think about Michigan State last year. Derek Harmon going to get probably picked in the round 1 as a defensive tackle. He's in the spring and then transfers out, and then you got to try to figure it out.
Yeah.
It's tough landscape in that sense.
Yeah, no doubt. You're recruiting guys on your team and guys not on your team to try to fulfill your roster. Now we won't even get into the the roster limits and how that now will impact the walk-on situation and all of that. I do want to ask you too. Nothing's been announced, so we're all under the assumption there'll be no spring game. I think we can safely assume the Gophers for the second straight year will not have a spring game. I am interested. First of all, I got to take a shot at our friends to the south and to the west. When PJ announced no spring game last year, Gopher fans weren't particularly thrilled. Part of it was weather, but you'd like to go watch the team, but no spring game. Okay. our buddies in Nebraska lost their collective mind, right? They brag often about, and it's a tip of the cap to them. 80,000 fans come to their spring game. Can't imagine not having a spring game. PJ Fleck is nuts. What is he doing? And then lo and behold, less than a year later, Matt Rule says, we're not going to have a spring game. And everyone's like, great idea, coach. Good job. Yeah, you're smart. And I'm like, you didn't think that last year when PJ Fleck canceled his spring game. So one, did PJ start a trend here? And two, what do you think of the trend of, I think Ohio State's now canceled. Was it Tennessee I saw maybe canceled? Iowa hasn't had one for years. I guess if anyone started a trend, it was them years ago. Kirk Ferentz said, to hell with it. We're not doing a spring game. We'll have an open practice. And that's what it seems this is all migrating to. So your thoughts on all of that mishmash I just said?
Well, I think everybody talks about the showcasing of players on TV. And I think, that is the case. There's some guys that might flash and a team might have interest. I think no matter what, your people who are evaluating rosters, they can go out and know who your players are. The recruiting staffs, they're constantly doing that. I think that's, one aspect of it. The other aspect is just the injury piece. Mm-hmm. I mean, right now, can you really afford to have guys hurt? Especially now, I think the underrated component is compressing this baby down to 105. You're going, I can't afford to have a whole bunch of injuries come out of spring ball, even more so than ever. So I think you might see a little bit more of an approach where teams are scaling this thing down. There's a lot less contact. I believe eventually we'll get to the point where it's like an OTA mini camp set up like the NFL has. The calendar will change. The contact rules will differ, especially since the season's much longer now. Teams that make it to the CFP and advance to multiple rounds are playing a ton of games.
Yeah, I saw Penn State push their spring back because they were playing into January. So I think I saw that I read somewhere they pushed their spring whole period back by 2 weeks or something, right? Because they're like, we need to still recover from this thing.
Absolutely. And so there will be some changes made with that. The calendar will look different. They'll modify things. Teams are starting to think about, what's the best way to evaluate players while still, showing growth. Like you have to have some live situations where guys can get used to playing and develop the technique at a full speed rate. But I mean, you're going to have to start protecting some of your players. Yeah. And I think that's the thing that maybe fans don't understand is like, yeah, you can play a spring game, but if somebody gets hurt, it's not a good situation. I believe now what you'll see is more like what Lane Kiffin's doing at Ole Miss, where they have like tug of war and all these different contest things that, make it an engagement opportunity with the community. That's what a lot of teams, I think, are going to do, and make it a fundraiser for NIL and all that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, because it does – OTAs in the NFL are fine. I mean, you got guys that have been in the NFL for 6 years, 8 years, 10 years, 3 years. They've played a lot of football, and it's their full-time job. I wonder – at the college level, for years, all these coaches have been telling us is how important the extra 15 practices if you make a bowl game are, and spring ball is so important. And if you scale it down too much, if it is as important as they claim, how much are these players going to miss out on improvement? And maybe I'm wrong. I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but it does create pause for me as to if we're going to really scale it down. A 19-year-old kid who's coming off of a successful high school career who redshirted as a freshman at college, or maybe now with the rules you don't redshirt much anymore, but played 3 games. I mean, and you're going to go OTAs with that kid? Right?
Well, I mean, here's the aspect of it is like, now teams have to think about how they build the middle and back portions of their roster. Yeah. Like, are you really able to wait as long for players to develop? High school recruiting is changing. You get an offer as a high school player, you're probably running a little bit faster because you don't know how many you're going to get.
Yep.
Where teams might value churning, the FCS players that, are really productive coming in and tossing a bunch of those guys in that can at least be special teams players for you that have played and, experienced the game. They've been developed and coached at the lower level. There's going to be some interesting roster strategy stuff. And I think teams that think outside the box here are going to really put themselves in an interesting position, especially as the CFP changes here. That's going to change, based on what people are reporting. So this whole world of college football is becoming very fascinating fast.
No doubt about it. GophersGuru.com is the webpage. It doesn't mean Daniel House only follows the Gophers. Let's ask him quickly. I know there's some crossover. A lot of Gopher fans or Vikings fans. As we are recording this, we're just past an hour past the franchise tag deadline. The Vikings did not franchise the quarterback Sam Darnold. They did hint, apparently, leaking out news that it doesn't mean they wouldn't entertain down the road, likely. I don't foresee saying, who knows, maybe someone will be listening to this. We're recording on Tuesday. We'll be listening on Thursday, and the Vikings have signed Sam Darnold to a deal. I doubt that. I'm sure they're going to want to play, he and his agents are going to want to play this out to see how the negotiating goes with everybody. That said, so the Vikings may have some more negotiation with him, may not. Does that surprise you at all that they did not franchise Sam Darnold?
Just too risky to franchise and potentially trade. I know the scarcity of the quarterback class this year potentially is like, maybe you could pull it off. But I think how the end of the season ended, maybe his market's not as robust as it once was. People were projecting it to be. Maybe the Vikings can get, a bargain type of contract for him to come back and have some security, another year of development. And maybe Sam just doesn't want to go to another change of scenery. He's been there, done that, experienced when it doesn't go well, what it looks like. And he's very in a stable situation here with JJ being young, coming back from injury. Is there another year where he could play? You could sign up like a 2-year deal or something if it's affordable. Or, you could sign him to a deal that is manageable, lower, way lower than the franchise tag, and somebody gets hurt or they miss out on somebody in the draft and you turn around and trade him for an asset.
Sure.
Then that's another scenario that I was thinking about today. So I was not surprised that they did not apply the tag.
Yeah, I agree, because we don't know what the market is. My hunch, and what do I know, is that it won't be as robust as people think. I don't think he's going to get an $85 million 2-year deal or a 3-year $125 million deal. I just don't. But so if that's the case and you put $40 million, his agent might say, we're taking the $40 million, right? And particularly if another team's not offering much, right? And now your whole plan gets, at least in the short term, thwarted a little bit. And now you take $40 million on the cap when you needed to spend that money probably on interior D linemen, interior O linemen, cornerbacks, whatever else needs. I think those are the main needs. But what is your comfort level with this team if J.J. McCarthy is the starter on opening day next fall?
Well, JJ was my top fit for quarterback that the Vikings could have selected last year. I just think, system wise, what his strengths and weaknesses, how he fits the system, having that year to just sit actually is probably a good thing, just to be able to understand the system better. It's a very complex system. People, that have been around that offense and know the terminology of it, they're like, this thing is complex. So I think him just being able to sit there, you can't possibly replicate game reps. It's just totally different, the processing and stuff. But the understanding that he has of the system is going to help him translate. I think you got to set the table for him by really investing in the offensive line. I'd like to see him sign Will Fries from the Indianapolis Colts, just solidify that guard spot, draft another guard, and probably end up keeping Bradbury, but, having a new rookie guard and a big free agent signing guard, and then you got O'Neal and Darisaw at the tackle spots. I think that would go a long way toward putting him in a good spot, and they just need to run the football better. They did not run the ball well enough. They need more creativity schematically in what they do. You got to be able to close the game out, run the football effectively. I felt like the Vikings were close to doing that. Like, they were in spots where they needed to just run the ball and close the game out, and they just couldn't quite do it.
Yeah. The Vikings, where they pick right now, and they don't have a lot of draft capital. 4 picks, I think, right? Am I wrong on that? Is it 4?
Yeah, 1st, 3rd, and 2 5s.
Yeah, so knowing that they got to take advantage, do you think they'll stay put and draft a fit of need, or do you think they'll try to do some fancy stuff and try to accumulate a few more picks?
It's tough because when you have such little draft capital, you need to get some more. Like, the Vikings probably have to trade back, but there could be a really good option available. If there's a defensive tackle, I think Derek Harmon's going to get picked high, but like, if he slid down, he'd be an awesome fit, really solidify a need that they had. You could also trade back, potentially add someone like Donovan Jackson, a guard that I really like from Ohio State. But I think they have to get more picks. I mean, you got to give yourself a lot of darts to throw. I think this draft has it's not a blue chip heavy draft, but there's a lot of really good starting caliber players if you evaluate well that can help your team and take you to the next level. So I think defensively, I'd use a lot of draft picks on that side of the ball, just because I think that's where the strength of the draft is, especially on the edge and defensive tackle. And then running back on offense. This is an outstanding running back draft, which is good. The Vikings need a running back. They need a DT.
Yep.
They can solidify those things in the draft.
So if the plan goes to fruition, you got J.J. McCarthy on a rookie contract, which by design now, that has been the new in vogue thing. Pay a quarterback on his rookie deal and then go solidify the rest of the roster. So you've got this pile of money. The salary cap went up. What are areas that if you're going to spend money, if you're Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, that you're going to target?
All right, let's see how close I am to Kwesi here. We're going to go interior O-line. I want to sign Will Fries from the Colts. I think he really is, he had the tibia fracture. I think he can work his way back. Film was solid. Interior D-line, DT, I like Tershawn Wharton from the Kansas City Chiefs, a rotational player that I think could ascend with a larger snap share. Then at corner, I know a lot of people talking about Payne Murphy, DJ Reed. I like Paulson Adebo from the New Orleans Saints. I think his experience in a variety of different coverage types, the versatility that he would provide in that respect would fit Brian Flores' scheme well. And then, you got to make a decision on Cam Bynum, but I think Jeremy Chin is super intriguing. He is so athletic. He can work around the line of scrimmage. He can play in the deep half. He's so versatile and an explosive weapon from the back end. Those are a few players that I would consider signing that, you're going to have to spend some cash, especially for Will Fries, but it's totally worth it because you got to get that O-line figured out. You have to be able to set the table for JJ to put him in a good spot for long-term success. Yeah,
we don't need, if you're a Vikings fan, early onset, problems with getting happy feet on pass rush as a first-year starter. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be able to throw to score, run to win. I think that's the recipe. It translates at the end of the year. You have to be able to show physicality and really, you want to get to the point where teams have to take away the run game and you're able to win matchups one-on-one on the outside. I think the draft, they really need to get another big, springy target wide receiver that can, play more of like a power slot role and stretch the field to give them another complementary option to Jefferson and Addison as well. They just need a little more size and physicality, vertical stretch ability in that wide receiver room.
All right, well, very good, man. You've given us over an hour of great content on Gophers and then wrapping it up with a little Vikings talk. And as I mentioned, when we get into spring football, we'll certainly love to have you back and dive really deep into what we're seeing. The few times we'll likely get to see what the Gophers are throwing out there as a lot of it gets pretty secretive that time of year for sure. GophersGuru.com is the webpage, and Daniel House has been our guest this week. As always, Daniel, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
There he is, Daniel House, episode 161. My thanks again to the great Gopher Guru Daniel House, providing just a comprehensive, intelligent, and incredible breakdown of Golden Gopher football. Find more compelling and interesting content at GophersGuru.com. He'll appreciate you stopping by and subscribing. Episode number 161 presented by Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. If you're buying or selling a business, visit sunbeltminnesota.com or tnma.com. We're also partnered with Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union, a locally member-owned full-service financial invested in you. You can learn more at affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. That's affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. Affinity Plus, banking for Minnesotans. OnX Maps also sponsors our show. Right now, happy fishing. Again, I'd invite you to listen to past podcasts, and please be sure to click that subscribe button of the Go Gopher Podcast right now. It's free to subscribe, no cost to you, and free to listen to any episode at any time. And please share the link of this podcast with others so they can subscribe and listen as well. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please let us know with some positive feedback on your social media channels. We'll talk again next week.